Hi, my name is Rashawn, and I'm going to be doing the axle bones today. Um, Here we have our skull, and we have the frontal bone, and we have the parietal, which is on both sides of the head. In the back, we have the occipital bone, which is back here, and then right here, occipital bone, I'm sorry, is here, and then right here is the external, external occipital protuberance bone, and that's just not like projection that sticks out. Its function is for muscle attachment. Next, we have the temporal bones, and the temporal bones are on both sides of the face. Um, those are the temporal bones. And then we have the TMJ, our temporal mandible joint, and that's going to be right here. And we'll pop that back in. Next we have is the stylus process, the mastoid process. So the mastoid process is going to be right here for the mastoid process. And the little thing that's sticking out is going to be the styloid process. So you might not be able to see it too good, but the styloid process sticks out. The next one we have is the external acoustus meatus, and that's that little hole that is right here, and its function is to go from the external part of the ear through to the eardrum. Next we have is the squamous part of the temporal. So on both sides again is the squamous parts of the temporal. They're over here on both sides. The next thing we have is the porous part of the temporal bone. So you have to pop the head off, and in here is the porous part of the the pectoris part of the temporal bone. That's right here, and its function is to um, hold the temporal lobes of the brain. The next one we have is the sphenoid, and the sphenoid is this area here. Again, I don't know if you can see it. It is that area here for sphenoid. Up here is ethmoid. Um, Over here is the lesser wings on the top, and on the bottom is the greater wings. Over here we have ethmoid bone again. In the ethmoid bone we have the silica, we have the crystal galley. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm ahead of myself. So we have the optic nerve next, and the optic nerves are right here, or in the eye part back here is the optical nerves, and the optical nerves carry um, the cranial and optical nerves. The next thing we have is the silica tertiary, and the silica tertiary is right here. And right here, what sits in the silica tertiary is the pituitary gland. That just sits right in there. Next, we have ethmoid. Ethmoid again is up here. After ethmoid now is the crystal galley, and the crystal galley is just this little attachment right here, and it's just the dual membrane fold. After that, there is you can't see them on the skeleton, but there are holes that are here, and those are part of the olfactory nerves, and those are filaments of the olfactory nerves that are responsible for smell. I'm going to put this down, and we're going to do the cranial sutures. So are we going to do sutures? So this first part is the cranial. Is the coronal suture, and that's here in the front. So here's the frontal, and then here's the parietal. So it's closest to parietal and the frontal bone. Next we have is the squamous. We have the the sagittal suture, and the sagittal suture is right here, and it's separated between the right and left, and it's right next to the parietal bone. After that, we have the lambdoidal bone suture, and that suture is by the occipital bone and the parietal bone. And then we have the squamous sutures, and that's on both sides of the temporal. So they're just, you can't see them on here, but they're squiggly little lines on both sides of that. Next we have is maxillary, the maxillary bone, and then the maxillary bone is here. Next to the maxillary bone is going to be they want the alveolar process and the maxillary, and then those are the little indents in between the teeth. Um, After that, we have the nasal bone, which the nasal bone is right here. That is the nasal bone right there. Um, After the nasal bone, we have the zygomatic bone, which is here, and here's the zygomatic bone. Here's the zygomatic arch, so the zygomatic process and the zygomatic process and the zygomatic bone come together and they create the zygomatic arch. There are two bones which form the bony nasal septum, which is here. That is going to be the vomer bone, and then the perpendicular ethmoid bone. The inferior nasal concha, that's in here, and then that is going to be, its function is the lateral walls of the nasal. It forms the lateral walls of the nasal cavity. The next one we have is the mandible, and then the mandible is here. Here's the mandible body. Here's the mandible angle. Um, Here is the ramus right here, and I'm going to pull this out. And here's the mandible condyle, the mandible notch, the coronoid process. And so we can put that down. So that entails the head. So the next thing we have is the skeleton. And then, I don't know if you can see the skeleton. So the skeleton is the cervical, the thoracic, the lumbar, the sacrum, which is down here. Here's the sacrum down here, and then this little piece right here is the coccyx. So the coccyx, sacrum, here's the lumbar, and then the first part of the vertebrae is it's too high. Okay, so the first part of the vertebrae is the cervical, and that's C1 through C7. So how many is there for the cervical? Cervical has 7, and then the first one is the atlas. So this is the atlas, and then the atlas has these little articulation areas that will articulate with the back of the head, which is the occipital condyles. I don't know if you can see that there. And those will be responsible for articulating together, and they're responsible to help you say, nod your head yes. The next one after that is going to be that was your atlas. This is your axis, the second one. And the second one, it rotates, so it's responsible for helping you say the yes and no. I'm sorry, the no. So that's your no. It's the rotating. Sorry, that's the dens. Okay, so we're just going to leave that off. Okay, so the next part we have is there's 7. We said of the cervical. After that is going to be the thoracic, and there are 12 thoracics, and here is the spinous process. That's this little part sticking out right there, and then I'm sorry. So this part that's sticking out is the spinous process. Next to that is the transverse process, and those are those little areas right here on either side. The part that's in the middle right here is the intervertebrate foramen. So, but that's on the C7, so that's on the cervical. But the same thing is here in the thoracic. The thoracic also has, after the thoracic is the it asks if there's an intervertebral foramen. What goes through there is the spinal cord nerves, and that passes through there. The body of the vertebrae is the harp shape. So that body that's on there, that's on the vertebrae, which is the little round, that little part right there. I don't know if you can see it. These don't come off easily. So there's this little piece right here. and it looks like it is it's a heart shape, and then the position of the intervertebral disc is circular. Next we have our lumbar 1 through 5, so there are 5 of them, and then here's the sacrum, and the sacrums are fused together, and that's here. So here's sacrum, and then right under that is the 4 coccyx. After that we have the sternum. I'm sorry, I'm running. The sternum. The sternum is here. Here's the mandible. The mandible is right here. Here is the body. Here's the xiphoid process. The jugular notch has this notch right here. Here, 1 through 7 are your true ribs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. That's your true ribs. The rest are your false. And then 11 and 12 are going to be your floating ribs. And then we're all done. That concludes this. Thank you. Bye.